When it comes to pairings in Naruto, battle lines between fandoms tend to get drawn pretty quickly, and the debates between fans can get really nasty very fast. Well, enough of you guys have been asking me to do an in-depth analysis on Boruto and Sarada, going over every single key sign that these two will end up together, and after looking at all of the evidence and actually rereading quite a few light novels, I can see why quite a few of you guys actually feel this way. So in this video, we're going to be looking at not just the Boruto anime, but we're also going to be looking at the Naruto manga, the Naruto light novels that are set into the Boruto timeline, the Boruto movie, as well as Boruto novels set in the actual timeline, and then the Boruto manga itself. Now, the spurned fans of Naruto and Sakura and Sasuke and Naruto fans have pointed out that Masashi Kishimoto's writing in Naruto chapter 700 is one of those key points for Boruto Sarada being the end game, especially after the Boruto anime recreated that famous scene where Naruto and Sasuke kissed each other, but the anime for Boruto stopped just short of Boruto and Sarada kissing. That homage made a lot of people go back to Naruto chapter 700 after we see Sarada stalk Boruto throughout the entire chapter, watching him from a distance just far enough back that Boruto can't actually see her, just as Hinata used to hide behind every nook and cranny inside of Konoha as she watched Naruto. When Sarada tells Sakura that she doesn't understand a thing about boys, Sakura immediately realizes that Sarada was talking about Boruto, which implies that this is not the first time that Sarada has stalked Boruto in the past. After Sakura says Boruto's name, Sarada's shown with a smile on her face, which people rightfully say that given Kishimoto has conceded that he cannot write romance even when he makes an effort to do so because it makes him uncomfortable, and given the fact that we've seen how Minato was shown stalking Kushina from afar and Hinata was shown stalking Naruto from afar as well, that leads to people saying that 2 + 1 = 3 in this situation. Now, it would explain why in the manga we have what some fans refer to as being thirsty Sarada, who is shown biting her glasses and getting all hot and bothered when she thinks about Boruto when nobody is watching her inside of her room. Personally, I happen to think that the strongest evidence actually comes from the Boruto movie novelization, as well as another novel that is set in the Boruto era. This would be Boruto novel 5, but we'll get into Boruto the movie's novel first. So in the Boruto movie novel, we have internal monologues from both Boruto and Sarada that give you a glimpse into how each feels about the other, as well as their thoughts during certain interactions, which we weren't privy to in the anime adaptation of the story. Now, in the Boruto movie novel, we have a moment where Boruto acknowledges that he knows that Sarada is always watching him, even when she thinks that he doesn't actually notice her, which is in line with what we saw in Naruto chapter 700. Boruto in this novel makes it a point to say during his internal monologue that it's because he knows that Sarada is watching him that he goes out of his way to make sure that he looks good in front of her, which explains why there have been times where Boruto's tended to show off a little bit too much because in the back of his mind, he knows Sarada's watching him. Now, it's because she's been keeping such a close eye on him that we get these small moments like the scene during the Academy arc where during the fight with the Iwabe, we see how Sarada is getting visibly concerned for Boruto's well-being, and when Chocho, someone who knows Sarada very well, points out Sarada's change in demeanor, Sarada immediately tries to play it off, but as we all know from the anime, Chocho's intuition and instincts aren't to be ignored, with even Kakashi and Shikadai in Boruto episode 211 noting that her keen observation is very impressive. For Chocho to make it a point to mention something like this about Sarada is a sign that this is something out of character for Sarada, and this wouldn't be the first time that we've seen Chocho do something like this. Chocho in Boruto novel 5, which focuses on their time during the Ninja Academy, Chocho directly says to Sarada that she knows that Sarada is always watching Boruto when she thinks that people aren't looking at her, and she says that Sarada's essay that they have to write is likely going to be about Boruto himself, which makes Sarada stutter and blush and stammer and get very flustered in that moment, which makes Mitsuki have an internal monologue about how he notices that Sarada always changes the tone in her voice whenever she speaks to Boruto. In the manga, during the battle with Kashi and Koji, we see yet again Sarada's concern for Boruto once more cause her to act out of character. Normally, she's cold and calculated when it comes to battle situations. However, the moment that Sarada sees Kashi and Koji approach Boruto, she draws her kunai and she stands over him in a protective manner. Despite knowing the fact that Kashi and Koji is likely to kill her, Sarada goes out of her way after that to be the one who insists on carrying Boruto while he's unconscious, and then once Boruto regains consciousness, she still insists on being the one to take care of him. We've never seen Sarada get this worked up over another teammate, not like she was for Boruto in this moment. We again see that level of concern in the manga where despite the fact that she's she's in the hospital, Sarada's only concern is about Boruto, and is enough so that Sakura has to calm down her daughter, telling her to only focus on her recovery after the Boro battle and to not worry about Boruto, which, as a side note, this is not something you saw in the anime because they took Sakura out of the scene. Now, in the anime, Sarada's desire to protect Boruto has been shown to be a source of her own power, with Sarada awakening her Tsutomu Sharingan during the rematch with Deepa, and it being done so in a way that is a direct response to her desire to protect Boruto. Now, the feeling, the desire, the need to protect Boruto isn't something that's one-sided. Boruto feels the same way for Sarada, and it runs on a very deep level, deeper than that of friends. Now, in the Boruto movie novelization, you have a moment where Boruto directly thinks about the fact that nothing else mattered to him in the moment when Momoshiki arrived other than protecting Sarada, which goes back to the earlier point of Boruto feeling the need to overperform when he knows that Sarada is watching him. Boruto's monologue is very specific, and it's important to look at the language. He says it's not about being able to show his face to Sarada after that moment, nor was it about the difference in power between he and Momoshiki, who Boruto literally just saw destroy 1,000 of Naruto's shadow clones with only a single hit, which again is not something you saw in the anime. Boruto also says that it wasn't about the difference in power between Boruto and Kinshiki, who Boruto just saw block a Susanoo's sword attack by Sasuke, which again was not in the actual anime. This is in the Boruto movie light novel. Now, by Boruto's own words, he says that protecting Sarada was literally the only thing that mattered to him in this moment, going so far as to say that he must protect her no matter what. Now, that's very strong language right there. No matter what. It implies that Boruto would have given his own life to protect Sarada if need be. He existed in that moment only to protect Sarada. By this point in the story, Boruto had not yet made that promise to her to be the shadow for the Hokage. It goes in line with the other moments in the novel that build to this scene that hint at a deeper connection between the two. This should also make you look at the scene in the Mitsuki desertion arc a little bit differently. After Boruto finishes the Ryuchi Cave trials, who was the first person that he was shown being concerned for when it was over? It was Sarada that he checked on first, with Boruto holding Sarada, smiling as he looked deeply into her eyes, with Sarada making an exhausted smile at Boruto, just like Sakura did when Sasuke held her after she and Obito rescued Sasuke from Kaguya's dimension. We also have a moment where Sarada, when she's by herself in the light novel, is described as being lonely once she's apart from Boruto. Now, that's very specific language right there. She's got other friends inside the village. She has another teammate in Mitsuki, but when she's away from Boruto, it's very specific. It says that she's lonely, and she's shown kicking the stones out of frustration, and her thoughts reveal that she finds herself being sad at the fact that Boruto's begun to change. She describes Boruto in that moment as being the boy who she's always found herself running behind, and in that moment we see a side of her that we've never seen before. We see somebody who's longing to be in Boruto's presence. Now, Sarada in that novel also directly describes the sight of Boruto's smile as being something that causes her chest to unintentionally throb, and it makes her realize that Boruto could melt anyone's heart with this smile. Sarada in turn has an internal monologue where she herself says that when she's hugging Boruto, that while their faces are extremely close to one another, that she was smiling a smile that was wider than she would normally allow other people to see, which is yet another sign that when it comes to Boruto, she's more than willing to lower her guard and to show a side of herself that she doesn't normally show to other people, not even her close friends like Chocho. Now, in the Boruto movie novel, after Boruto had promised himself to protect Sarada at all costs, when Boruto wakes up in the hospital bed, the very first image that he sees is that of Sarada at his bedside crying, which again, you don't see this in the anime. You see her at his bedside, but you don't see Sarada breaking down into tears as she's at Boruto's bedside, and this immediately in the novel makes Boruto once again put on a brave face in front of her. It isn't just knowing that she's watching him that pushes Boruto forward, and it isn't just when she's in his presence that Boruto puts Sarada first. During the tuning exams in the novel, Boruto had given up hope. He was about to accept failing the exams, but in that moment, it was the memory of Sarada smiling that passes through Boruto's mind. Not the idea of letting down his father, not the idea of not becoming a Chunin. It was the image of Sarada smiling that made Boruto find the resolve to continue on with the exam. During the novel version of the scene when Sarada breaks out into a full-out blush when Boruto promises to support her as Hokage, Sarada, as she's turned away, has a monologue where she looks up into the sky, she compares it to Boruto's eyes, and she has a moment where she thinks to herself that she's always going to look into Boruto's blue eyes. Now, the reason why I put so much emphasis on the scenes from a couple of these light novels is that we get small scenes that give quite a bit of information about these characters. Just relying on the anime or the manga isn't going to give you the full picture. Without the internal thoughts of the characters, you won't get these moments like when Sarada in one of the Boruto novels describes the feeling inside of her as an unrestrained affection when she sees Boruto smile in her direction. Nor will you get the passing lines where Boruto holds dear to the fact that Sarada believed in him when others hadn't done so. The closest we saw of this was actually in the Academy arc, where Sarada tells Boruto that she believes in him when he says that something's going on with his eye, but no one believes him when he actually says it. Sarada calls him an idiot, much in the same way that Naruto would be called an idiot by Sasuke, but she follows it up by saying that she knows that Boruto isn't a liar either. Being one of the very first people to show that support to Boruto, believe in him when others didn't believe in him, it's not too unlike when Hinata was shown believing in Naruto when they were children. What's also very interesting is that Boruto's thoughts on Sarada are worded in a thinly veiled way that slightly mirrors Naruto's thoughts on Hinata. Naruto referred to Hinata as being a creepy girl who's always looking at him, but Naruto eventually married her and had 2 kids with her. Boruto in the character profile of the manga refers to Sarada as being a peculiar girl. Now, the reason why this is important is that we've seen less in this franchise that's been used as a way to actually link characters together. A great example being my video where I revealed how Choji and Karui fell in love and how Sai and Ino fell in love with one another. One is a romantic pairing done horribly wrong, and the other is romantic writing done at the bare bones. With the Naruto franchise, we aren't expecting this to be a shonen that can pull off romance as well as it pulls off the battles and character development like, say, Rurouni Kenshin and Inuyasha did in both of their series. In the Naruto franchise, the clumsy attempts are usually the best that you're going to get unless there's an accidental moment of brilliance. Keeping that in mind, there are some flashes of brilliance here. Now, the anime has built on Sarada's strong belief in a major way. During the Mitsuki desertion arc, after she warns Boruto that leaving the village will have him branded as a rogue ninja, Sarada, upon seeing how passionate Boruto was about Mitsuki being innocent, Sarada puts so much trust into Boruto that she's willing to throw away her dream to be Hokage in an effort to support him. By her own words, leaving the village would have them branded as rogue ninjas. It would be a stain on her reputation, one that would keep her from being a Hokage. Yet, she takes that risk in order to support Boruto, and she doesn't think twice about it. It's an unconscious sacrifice that was made to support a loved one, which is going to say a lot if these two end up as a couple. Now, Chocho hasn't been the only one that's been shown to know the difference in behavior between Boruto and Sarada, especially when they're around one another. Mitsuki more than once referred to their chemistry, stating that they get along very well, and even going so far as to actually call them a couple. Given the added detail from these light novels, you can argue that they're at that awkward phase where they aren't comfortable with those feelings and they're not sure what to make out of them, not sure what they exactly are. This explains why the novel has that scene where Boruto notices how much more attention her male classmates are giving to Sarada, and he isn't sure about how he should feel about the attention that Sarada is gaining. Boruto in one breath will turn his nose up at the idea of Sarada being the Hokage, but deep down he doesn't want her to fail at her dream and has now moved as far as actually doing everything he can to turn her dream into a reality. The need to support one another, it goes both ways, with Sarada getting visibly upset when she's defended Boruto to Sasuke, when Boruto got his feelings hurt by Sasuke's critique of his Rasengan, and Sarada gets so worked up about the idea of Boruto training under Sasuke that you would think that she was the one who was being trained by Sasuke, something that we know that she desperately wants. When we look at the Boruto movie, we actually have additional scenes that weren't in the anime version. In the movie, when Boruto is learning the Rasengan over the course of a few days, Sarada is shown watching Boruto train while she's hiding in the trees, which is important because this is the second time that Kishimoto's written Sarada into a story where she's hiding and watching Boruto from afar. Given the fact that Kishimoto and Kodachi co-wrote the actual movie and Kodachi wrote the light novel, which was released 3 days after the movie, this wasn't something that would be slipped into the novel without Kishimoto's approval. Now, Sarada has been shown squeezing both of her hands together out of concern for Boruto, which is symbolic and has been used in the past to foreshadow pairings, like in the older Naruto Shippuden openings where we see a crying Sakura squeezing her hands out of concern for Sasuke. People have also said that they understand each other on a deeper level than anyone else would be able to actually relate to. Both Sarada and Boruto have essentially had their childhoods with their father's sacrifice due to their fathers being so important to the village, with Sasuke doing so from the actual shadows and Naruto doing so from the Hokage desk. When Boruto Boruto is visibly upset after Naruto misses his birthday. In the anime, it was Sarada who was the one who went to his room to provide him with comfort. The idea of the two firstborn children of the reincarnates of Asha and Indra who did the impossible by breaking the cycle of hatred and who together represent halves of the sage. You're talking about a kid with the possibility for so many Kekkei Genkai and so many abnormal traits that it's absolutely insane. So just on one list, a kid between Boruto and Sarada would have access to the Sharingan Kekkei Genkai, the Byakugan Kekkei Genkai. They would have access to the Uzumaki clan's large chakra reserves. They would have access to the strong body that comes from the Uzumaki being distant relatives of the Senju clan. You would also have somebody who, because they've got that strong body and those high chakra reserves, they have the potential to actually learn Sage Mode. And the fact that Boruto and Sarada themselves are geniuses means that that kid's likely going to have a high intellect. And when you add in the possibility of learning Uzumaki clan sealing jutsu, this kid is absolutely broken. If he makes a summoning contract with Godzilla or the Living Tribunal, nobody's going to be shocked. Let me know what you guys think is the strongest bit of evidence for Boruto and Sarada down in the comment section below. But as always, guys, if you like anything I had to say, don't forget to comment, rate, subscribe, and share. Thank you so much for watching to the end. Have an awesome day, guys.